Welcome back to OpenLine, talking about our booming economy here in Nashville, what it's done to housing prices. As a result, we have what's called gentrification. People are being forced out of neighborhoods where they've lived their entire lives. What can be done about it? How big is the problem? That's what we're talking about with a panel up here. We're also streaming this on our Facebook page. Michelle Smith said, as I went to break, create new neighborhoods. What do you think about the notion of new neighborhoods?
I think that's a understandable desire, right? Because, you know, kind of let's create this new thing and we'll overcome it, and you know, because part of that is we've lost something, right? I mean, that is the thing here. There's this, it's important to differentiate between space and place, right? There's the physical space that a neighborhood offers, right? We don't want to discount what it takes to create a neighborhood over time. And so there's the physical space, which developers want and new tenants want. They want that space in the city. But there's the place that the historic people have occupied for a period of time, right? The place is the soul, the spirit there. That's the thing that gets lost, right? I mean, that's one of the greatest disappointments, one of the greatest tragedies with gentrification, is you have the place spirit of a part of a city that it can be lost forever, right? Those people lose the touchstone. They lose where they went back to, where they can, you know, return to heal or return to remember their roots and stuff like that. So I think the suggestion to create a neighborhood is understandable, but it also makes neighborhood development almost too simplistic, right? There's a beauty in place, and space is just the physical container for the place. So I think we want to be careful to, you know, cautious to remember that gentrification doesn't have to necessarily require displacement, right? One of the brutal tragedies of gentrification often is that people lose the place around them while they diligently remain. The soul of what made their neighborhood, you know, beautiful or desirable is lost, and that's something we have to be cautious about as we move forward and try to address this issue.
It's not, you're saying it's not just supply and demand. There is a way, there's a way to have both, I guess, or you have to curb the supply and demand aspect of it.
Well, I think this is what Kay talked about, right? I mean, so much of this is an equity issue, right? It's about equitable development. How do we get to a place where probably no one wants, even though some may proclaim without understanding the effects of the economic upswing in Nashville to end, right? And that's the genesis of so much of this. Yes, it's also maybe some bad planning for how to mitigate it over time, but we have to be able to harness the power of that economic surge while not, you know, enduring the negative aspects of it.
Someone commented on here, Mel Coleman, when I ask, how are people affording these things? You know, you were saying they're going up everywhere, these condos and apartments, and many students can't afford to live there. Mel Coleman is saying many buyers have roommates. That's how they're affording these expensive condos and these homes. And I guess that's what it takes now, right? You have somebody else here saying that nurses can't afford, many of our patients can no longer afford to live within the center of Nashville. They now live in outlying areas.
That's true.
And so that's what we're beginning to see.
That's true. We, our program around New Level is a holistic approach to things. So we build, we rent, we educate, counsel, and we partner to bring solutions for people to have fit, quality, affordable housing. So when people come to us and call us, because they find us on the internet, their church refers them to us, their neighbor, their coworker, and they're looking for housing that's affordable. We ask some key questions, you know, about what's your monthly income, what's your take-home pay, and where do you work, and where is that located? And in many cases, we find ourselves, because we kind of have our pulse on what's affordable in terms of rental options in Nashville. In many cases, we'll push them to the edges and into the neighboring counties because that's the best option for them. So we find ourselves offering that. It's not that we're proud of that fact, but you know, our goal is to help them get into fit, quality, affordable housing, because that's the foundation of our lives is shelter. So you know, they're moving to Dixon County, Robertson County, Cheatham County, Rutherford County, Laverne.
What are the average rents, would you say? Do you have some numbers? What are average rents now in Nashville, Davidson County?
The latest number I have is somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,300 to $1,400 a month. That's very high rent. So for that worker that's making $36,000 a year, you know, it's really tough. And that's why we see the idea of roommates continuing, because that's the way you make it work, right? So you have the food. If you may find a 2-bedroom that you can make work, so you have a futon in the den, and then you have 2 bedrooms, and you have 3, and you split the rent between 3 people, and that's quite common, particularly among millennials, and it's also becoming more and more common to see generations, 2-3 generations living together, because that's people pooling their income to be able to afford the price of the rent of the home that they're in.
Is that what you're seeing?
Well, for me personally, I had experience with roommates, a bad experience. I was like, I can do this myself. I just did a lot of research and trying to find somewhere, one, I'm able to afford it, two, since I have a child, having a roommate, it's not really an option for me. So I really had to go around and ask, are you offering discounts for these type of employees? Just doing different research on who offers what amenities do they offer, like are utilities covered in the rent, so there will be less expenses for me to cover. Just a lot of research to make sure it's something what I could afford, and you know, keeping my fingers crossed that if my income will keep going up as I progress throughout my career, that I'll be able to afford housing.
Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Kevin. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, how are you?
Great. What's on your mind?
Oh, I've got well, let's see here. I was a product of this subject that you're talking about, having to move out because, you know, area was taking over. And it made a nice area. And so that's fine. I think it's a positive thing that you lose an old city, you gain something new. But I'd like to make a comment. This year,
okay,
we're watching Scripture being fulfilled, and the Philadelphia church is about to be gone. We're going to New Jerusalem, a new city, something brand new, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no even in the heart of men. So
okay, well, let's talk about the first part of what he said there. He thinks it's a good thing. So there are going to be people out there who say that, right?
Right.
And what do we say?
I mean, there is the rebirth, right? I mean, again, this, as I alluded to earlier, you know, and I think we all recognize and see, there's cities who are actively working to create the conditions that lead to gentrification. But I think we just simply cannot discount what a city loses, right? I mean, this is the geography of nowhere and place and placelessness, you know, 1970s and 1990s geographers and critical theorists who are talking about what it means when we transition from gentrification to generification, right? Where every place looks the same and we see the same set of shops. And for a city that's the it city, the creative city, a city that's internationally known for its creativity and its arts, to begin to give that away, right? There's the risk to lose the identity that makes a city, makes a neighborhood. And I know that's what, you know, Kay's organization is really focused on, is how do we preserve those neighborhoods? How do we get people, because that's the fabric of a community, right?
Yeah, and for people, many people, particularly people that I've gotten to know and love in the neighborhood where I work, which is North Nashville, roots run deep, and roots mean something. And there are pockets where there are modest homes, but they've been able to keep them somehow in the families. And one gentleman I met, and this neighborhood is very close to Fisk University, and I said, I asked him, I said, why are you still here? And he said, because these are my roots. This is where my family goes back 2-3 generations. I'm not leaving. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to leave. So even he's not leaving his home place. And so that, as we discussed earlier, that sense of place is very important to people's lives. And how they feel about themselves and their families and their community. And when you take away that sense of place, you lose something.
You go around Nashville and you'll see like 2 big houses and then 1 little house, and you know that that's the holdout. That person is holding out, and luckily that person, I guess, has the means to hold out, because some people, the taxes go up so high, property taxes, they have to sell. But we're seeing that more and more. Let's go to Danny. Hello, Danny.
Good evening. How is everyone doing?
Great. What's on your mind?
Well, you know, as I listen to the gentrification argument, and that is one thing that I love the fact that Nashville is growing, but it has grown so much that it has become so unaffordable. And the young lady spoke about how people are moving to the counties next to Davidson County. And with the transit system the way it is, that's got to be hurtful to a lot of people, just because they have to move in order to be able to afford to live. Now, my question is, what's going to happen when eminent domain kicks in? Because it's coming. There are going to be instances where people are going to be forced to leave. So what's going to happen when that starts to kick in the city of Nashville? Thanks for taking my call.
That's interesting. What about the issue of eminent domain?
I mean, you know, eminent domains, you know, it's certainly a word that attracts a lot of attention and generates a lot of understandable fear, right? I think jumping to a place where the government, you know, the state, you know, or local government is beginning to seize property, especially residential property, that seems a scary leap in terms of what might happen here. I think in as much as that fear may be very sound for that gentleman, I think there's more immediate concerns we've been talking about tonight that are much more deserving of our attention in terms of combating gentrification and, you know, I mean, trying to turn it in the moment, right? Not seeing a neighborhood as lost or a gentrification battle lost in a certain part of the city, but taking efforts to curb some of the negative effects in parts of the city.
Michelle Lee Smith here on Facebook. What we used to know as middle class 40 years ago seems like now are classified as upper lower class. It makes no sense to me to be in a place almost 5 years and there has been no change here, but I have to come out of pocket to stay another year because housing is so high around me.
Yes.
And yeah, what do you think of her comment there?
I mean, I agree with her comment. It's realistic. It's real. It's what she's living, along with thousands of other Nashvillians, and they're beginning to think about that. And there may be a point, there could be a point where people say, the city's too expensive. I'm going to look for another place. And then we may begin to lose some of the creative workers, the workers that we want to come and be here. We may begin to lose those. But also, you have to have workers like work in our state government, in our city government, in our public schools, in our institutions, our colleges, our universities. We need them in order for us to be efficient, effective, and have good operating institutions and governments. But guess what? Their salaries are not at that level where they can absorb and continue to absorb these kinds of price hikes. And that's the squeeze, is on those people that we depend on. Someone quoted a number that said, well, the new people coming in, their salaries are about $95,000 a year. That's fine, but where are they going to work? And who's taking care of their building or their back office people so that they can do their job, and where are they going to work? So it causes, I think, people that want to think a little deeper about this to be more reflective and think in a holistic type of way, so that we can not think with this person right in front of our nose, but who are all these other people behind them that we depend on?
All right, we have to take a break. We're going to start taking calls, a lot of calls. We'll take a break, and then I'll start going through some of the calls. Also, if you want to comment on Facebook, I'll read some of those comments. Take a break. Be back right after this.